Most of you know who I am. Probably don't need to go there. My name is Matt Cove. If anybody doesn't, I invited most of you, so probably not going to be an issue. I do have some of my work, most of the stuff I've done in Blender. If you do want to see what Blender is capable of, on my website, which is ironfuzz.com. Please don't go there now. We're going to continue moving. We're going to talk about Blender a little bit, in case you're not familiar with what Blender is. It is a fully 3D development environment. We have access to a lot of different areas here: modeling, lighting materials, basic and nonlinear animation tools, and I'll talk about that later. But the really good thing about this is it's under GNU public license, and it's also open source. GNU public license basically means that it is free to use for personal and commercial use. It is also open source, which means the source code, the programming stuff behind this, is available to the public if you want to download the source code and make your own modifications to the software. In order to get them into the official releases, you have to go through, they do have a committee, a Blender Foundation is actually what it's called, that approves the code and gets it submitted. We do have a render pipeline with a node-based compositor, so any of the stuff that you do in After Effects, you can do a lot of that stuff in line in the rendering pipeline. So when you render things out, rendering is a process we'll talk about here in a little bit, but for those of you that are familiar, if you want to add motion blurs or glows or depth of field, that's actually built into the rendering process. You don't have to do any of that stuff in After Effects. It also has a built-in game engine as well. This is available at blender.org. We are going to be using the Alpha, 2.5 Alpha, not official release yet, will be out this summer. So they have both the official release 2.49 out and the Alpha is on there as well. We're going to be talking about the interface. We're going to talk about modeling. We're going to be talking about shaders and a little bit of animation. That is more advanced stuff, so we're going to stick with some of these basic modeling topics and shader topics. And shaders is lights and materials together. I've kind of grouped those into one category. So here's what we hope to get out of this today. We're going to explore the new, easier to use layout. We're going to cover basic functionality so that you can come out of here. If you already know Blender or any other 3D package, you should be able to get the hang of this pretty easily. You're going to create a personalized Blender room. We're going to start with the room that's kind of bare. We're going to be modeling some things here. We're going to be putting textures in here and doing some lighting. So we're going to be turning this, hopefully, into something like this, which isn't really as much work as it looks like. And hopefully, in the process, showcase Blender's potential to use for your own personal work or your schoolwork or whatever you want to use it for. And I do have some other work, more advanced things to show you. So when we talk about modeling, I'm going to bring up some advanced models that you can open up and take a look at, just to show you basically the principles you're going to carry over from the stuff that you're working on and the more complicated things. This name right here, any of these guys that you see in orange are going to be sample files that you can open up. Our helpers here are going to have to stand, it looks like. Hopefully you brought comfortable shoes. So anytime you see an orange file here up on the screen, there's going to be the respective file inside of that workshop folder that you'll be able to open. So we're going to go ahead and we'll open this file here. Over here, very first thing, actually let's start with the green one because that's the most prevalent one on the screen. Viewport. This big area here should have a monkey head, or yours probably has some furniture. This is your viewport. This is your view of the 3D world. This is how you see the 3D space. It has things like an X, Y, and Z axis. I can give you the basic rundown of the 3D world. Just works like graphing, if you remember math class, when you graph things on X, Y, Z coordinates and drew your lines and all that stuff. It's exactly like that, only we have one more coordinate system there. We have a Z axis, we have depth. That's how it's mapping the 3D space. We have perspective and orthographic views that we can switch between. And I will demonstrate that. Right now I'm in a camera perspective. And I can switch to an orthographic view, which will be a perfect projection in a given direction. And we'll talk about how to do that here in a second. So here's the front view. I can switch to a top view or like a floor plan layout. I can jump back to my camera. And I also have free control over the 3D space and move this viewport around. So this is my viewport. This is how I see my 3D world. There are some basic commands here that we'll talk about. Your middle mouse button is going to control a lot there. And if you do have any questions, please hold up your hand. There's a couple gentlemen here that can come and help you out. The middle mouse, if you press that down, that's going to pan your camera. If you are in this camera view, it's just going to move this around. And that's not very interesting. So what we're going to do here is the number pad over here is going to control all of the camera functions for Blender. If you do not want to be in a camera view, make sure you hit number locks because by default that is off. We will want to turn number locks on because we want to use the keypad. You see little arrows there, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Those are going to rotate your camera. But first we need to actually get out of the constrained camera. So we're going to hit the middle one in there, the 5 key. Will take us into a different view here. We can still pan, which is the middle mouse. And you can scroll the wheel and that will zoom in. So there I can pan this around. The scroll wheel will zoom. And if you hold shift and do the middle mouse button, that's going to rotate your view around. Now you're going to want this probably to be in a perspective view because that's how we see the world. We see in perspective. And all perspective is things that are further away from you or smaller, things that are closer to you are larger, where orthographic views don't do that. Orthographics are basically projections from a given direction, like I mentioned before. The reason that we use those is because they have accurate dimensions. But we do also have perspective because that's how we see. So when we're working with dimensions, we want to be in orthographic. Perspective is for how we see the world. The problem with perspective and using that all the time is that if I look at Justin back there, I can say, well, Justin's about 4 inches tall. Well, no, Justin's not 4 inches tall. He's just really far away from me. So that's the problem with perspective is you can't accurately measure dimensions. So don't be confused about those. Try to stay in perspective because it's easier to look at for you. It's a lot harder to understand the orthographics. As you can see that this is the same view of this room here. This is ortho. See, as things go further away, they don't get smaller. They all get projected in the same direction. So it looks kind of weird. We see the world more like this.